Descartes, Prima Meditatio, Episode 5. Nec ideo etiam singulae erunt percurrendi, quod operis esset infiniti, sit quia suffosis fundamentis, quidquid iis super aedificatum est, sponte collabatur, aggrediar statim ipsa principia, quibus illud omne quod olim credidi nitebatur. Descartes now continues his discussion of the work of aversio, overturning all of his previous suppositions. Nor, he says, also in this way must individual ideas be toppled or gone through carefully, percurrendi. Singulae here is in the feminine plural nominative, and it is feminine because it refers to the opiniones. It's actually genitive in the previous sentence, but the opiniones or the suppositions. Its predicate is percurrendi, and thus percurrendi is also feminine plural and nominative. And this form percurrendi is from percuro, which means to run through, to survey, perhaps, to touch upon, and it is what is called a gerundive in this instance, that is a future passive participle. Now a gerundive plus a form of esse, and that is erunt in this instance, yields what is called by the grammar books a passive periphrastic. It connotes necessity or obligation, and when the agent is specified who must do the work, it is always in the dative, and thus I suspect there is an implicit mihi with this phrase. He says, I won't have to go through all of them individually, because, or which thing, quod, would be infiniti operis, of endless labor. There'd be no limit to the task if he had to examine each individual supposition by itself. But because, and this is now the second time he's used sed quia, suffosis fundamentis. Suffosis fundamentis, this is the noun fundamentum. It's the second declension neuter, and it is modified by suffosis, which is a participle from suffodio, suffodere, it's a third conjugation verb. It's sub, underneath, and fodio, which means to dig. So suffodio is probably translated best as undermine or weaken, but because with the foundations weakened, it's an ablative absolute, whatever, quid, was built, super aedificatum, upon them, and iis here is neuter plural and dative, with this compound verb, super aedificatum, whatever was built upon them, sponte collabatur, falls apart by itself. Collabatur is also a deponent verb from collabor, its third conjugation, collabor, collabi. It falls apart or slips away on its own. Because that is the case, sed quia, here we get the main verb, aggrediar. I will approach, or attack is another meaning. Gred is the stem that means to walk, ad means toward. I shall approach. It gives us our English word aggressive, aggression, etc. I will approach immediately the very principles or foundations, ipsa principia, the very bedrock items, on which illud omne quod, that whole thing which I once believed, quod olim credidi, was resting or was relying. Nitor is itself a deponent verb, nitebatur. Its subject is illud, modified both by omne and this relative clause. That whole thing which I once believed was resting upon quibus, upon those things, which are the very principles that I shall immediately attack. And aggrediar here is future tense.